First item on the agenda is public participation.
Sarah Pilling, 29 Garrett Avenue. I'm here wearing two hats tonight. The first is my gardening hat from Skunk Hollow. We have sent to Jennifer and hope they have sent to you the electronic version of our annual report, but I've come to give it to the township with some corroborating stuff, but we want to thank the township for allowing us to continue in the garden. We had 57 different separate families participating last year. We'll have 63 this year, and we may have one or two openings. So anybody who's here or is listening wants to apply, they get in touch with Katrina Ogilby at 222 Orchard Way. We had a very busy 2014. It started out quite cool, and we were a little late, but it stayed cool, and the pea season was just fantastic, as was lettuce and arugula. Went right into the summer. We had visitors from the second grade of Agnes Irwin, Haverford School, Villanova. We participated in the Radnor Conservancy's Echo Tour. We were part of the Great All-American Camp Out. We did a scavenger hunt. There were almost over 100 people there that night. And of course, we won the PHS Blue Ribbon. We will be receiving that on Monday, March the 6th at the Flower Show at 6:30 at night. Financially, we're in a really good spot. We now have our expenses no longer exceed the receipts from the people who pay to come to garden with us. A reminder, it's $50 to participate, which was a fee set by the commissioners. And I guess two things. One is we served as the site for a incoming senior at Radnor High School to do some community service, and we're hoping to beef that up this coming year by letting the school district, the high school, know that we are an available site. He came in and he weeded and moved wood chips. He did a lot of grunt work and was a wonderful young man. The other piece is our fill abundance, of which we are extremely pleased. This last year, we pick and wash and weigh and keep records of our the produce that we give every Saturday from the middle of June to the middle of September. We deliver it to Lynn Villa, who delivers it to Loaves and Fishes in Prospect Park, and they are providing year-round food for 650 families in Lower Delaware County. We used Mom's Organic Market as our comparison, and this last year we gave away $3,250 worth of food. So I will give the report to Jennifer. So that's my first hat. My second hat.
So the giveaway is after the families that produce their own for their own consumption and their friends, you still have this surplus of $3,250 for 600 families.
And with only 52% participation, so we got to beef that up. 125 persons ate from the garden regularly, and the gardeners shared their produce with an additional 128 families, mostly in Radnor Township. So we're really spreading. What we did this year, Jim, which we hadn't done before, was if you didn't want us to pick from a garden plot, you put a plant stake with a red flag in the plot, which said, don't do that. Otherwise, we didn't pick from, we call it grazing. So if I was picking chard, I'd pick 6 from one bed, 6 leaves from one bed that didn't have a red flag, and then I'd go on to the next one, and I'd pick 4 or 5 more. We never picked totally. This was a new feature this past year, whereas before we would just be standing there going, oh my God, I wish we could pick these vegetables that are lying on the ground, but we.
So I assume there's a lot of labor in doing this.
Yeah.
How many people help do this?
Normally we have about 20 on a Saturday, because we do it from 9:30 to 11:15, so it's a very tight schedule to pick, wash, weigh, and package.
Oh.
So it's quite something. But anyhow, let me put on my other hat. My other hat is to tell you or remind you about the wonderful rain barrel workshop next Tuesday night here at 6:30. The door opens and the program starts at 6:45. It's going to be fun. Do It Best has donated 2 rain barrels to be drawn for. And in addition, they are giving certificates so that if you go to the workshop, you can get $15 discount on any rain barrel that Do It Best carries that you want in the particular style. It's going to be informative. Steve Souza is going to be the speaker again. I've heard him. He's really a great speaker. He's light, he's pragmatic, he's full of information, and he's not dry. And he's with Princeton Hydraulics. This is an election year coming up, as you all know, and we think stormwater is going to be an issue. And what we're hoping for is that eventually every single property in Radnor Township will have at least 1 rain barrel at the bottom of their downspout. I have 3 at my house, and all 3 of them are hooked up to soaker hoses, the result of which is I rarely, if ever, have to water any of the plants in my yard. And B, because I don't have to use water, my sewer fee is lower because I'm allowing the rain to water. So we hope that all the BOC will come, and I'm going to give you each a card so that you will remember, and the township residents who are either here or here in this room or watching on TV will seriously consider doing it. It'll be a very informative meeting, and I hope you all come. I'll give you those, and then I'll put the rest of the cards out on the desk so that anyone who's interested can come and pick up a card. Just remember, 2 free rain barrels, they'll be drawn for, and a $15 credit on any rain barrel of any style or price that you want to pay at Do It Best Hardware.
Would you repeat the time and date again?
It is next Tuesday, which is the 3rd of February, the day after Groundhog Day. It's here in the Radnor Shire Room. The doors open at 6:30 and the program starts at 6:45. So I hope you'll all come. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Lloyd Goodman. I'm the owner of the Radnor Racket Club at 175 King of Prussia Road. And I was going to come on Monday, but since it got snowed out, I thought I'd just make a few quick comments and question regarding the PLO zoning. Per the letter that I saw in the packet from Retu Associates to this board, it seems likely that they'll be the ones to be hired to prepare a mixed-use overlay or some version of something like that. I would appreciate if I can meet with them at the earliest appropriate time to discuss my property's unique role in enhancing the local community's partial redevelopment. I thought Kevin Kochanski's proposal from December of 2013 had many sensible conditions for properties under 10 acres like mine to incentivize uses other than offices. I think it would be helpful for Retu to meet with me on my site to actually look at some of the details and get a good perspective of it, because I haven't met with them, they haven't contacted me. But I have reached out to them now, and they called me back, but we missed each other. So I was wondering, is this something that can be worked out? Because in reading their letter, I see how they're going to meet with Biomed and Brandywine, and they talk about, coming to a public meeting, and I just didn't know if I could somehow, if they could be authorized, whatever, to actually come to my site and meet with me.
Bob?
We can do that. Well, we can do that because I believe there's still a little bit of money left on the original one, so we can make sure that Jennifer will be in touch with you, and we'll try to schedule a time for you to do
I mean,
that.
it'd be like an hour, I think. we'd be
Sure.
able to-
That'd be fine. We can
Okay.
do that.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Next is the consent agenda. Is there any commissioner wants to take any item off the consent agenda? Any public?
I
want to
want to pull B out just so I can talk about some of the items in there. No changes, just
Any
item
other
B.
commissioner have any item?
Yeah, yes, the letter G.
Any else? Any member of the public?
Also pull F, please.
Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with those 3 items out?
So moved.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Seconded, Jim?
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner discussion? Public discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda passes. Can I have a motion to accept the department's monthly reports?
I'll move to accept the reports.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Well, raise your
Okay.
hand, one person. Okay, John Nagel, okay.
I
John?
just wanted to, I used to highlight a lot of the township activity, and we've since put the monthly reports into the consent agenda. So I'll just take a minute, kind of go through a couple highlights. I'll just focus on the Public Works Department. This is for the month of December. We have, within Public Works, we have the building maintenance. There's actually one person responsible for maintaining 4 buildings. That includes trash, cleanup, interior maintenance, salting, shoveling, taking care of all the sidewalks, all the access. That's one person that does that. Fleet, we have 3 persons who maintain 149 pieces of equipment. That includes trucks and pickup trucks and all types of equipment. The Highway Department has 12 persons. And I won't get into all the details, but in 1 month, for example, they clean 300 storm grates. Now, in addition to all the other things they do, they pay plowing, cleaning leaves, all that kind of stuff. Parks and Rec, the Parks Department with 13 persons. In 1 month, they did 20 trees. They repaired all the fences. They cleaned all the bathrooms in all the parks 3 times a week. They maintained and cleaned park playground equipment 3 times a week. And they assisted the public, the solid waste department with trash pickup when they weren't busy. The sewer department, 3 persons. They maintained 5 pumping stations in the township. They maintained them 5 times a week, 100 times a month. Without that, those systems could break down and cause extensive flooding in many, many homes in the township. They also helped clean restrooms in the township. The Solid Waste Department, 17 full-time employees. They did 7,500 collections in the month of December, and in addition to that, 69 open truck collections of large items. That's just a sampling. I'll do this every month. I'll pick one department. If you get a chance, please look at these monthly summaries. The staff put these lists together for us, and we kind of gloss over it a lot. But if you ever wonder where your tax money is going, I think it's a really good value proposition if you look at the few people that are doing so much work every month. So thank you.
Any other commissioner comment? Any public comment? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0. Can I have a motion to approve Resolution 2015-07 for the purchase of 5 new vehicles by use for the police department?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Commissioner comment?
Yes. I wanted to go through this a little bit, so Bob, I don't know who would be best, if it's you or Bill. This is for the purchase of 5 patrol cars, and I don't think that the public knows what that cost, but it is, the cost for the vehicles in the package says $200,908.15. Can you talk about why what's the need and how we came to the decision and where the money's coming from and if it's in the budget?
Commissioner, the manager asked me to answer that. I am in charge of fleet operations under the direction of Superintendent Colarulo. The $209.0815, one of the vehicles that is in there was destroyed in a recent accident. So that's approximately $34,774.12. That's going to be an insurance reimbursement, and we are waiting for the full payout from the insurance companies for that. So really, in the capital budget, we were only due 4 new vehicles. Still a lot of money, but it is 4 vehicles. We were replacing fleet vehicles that all have exceeded over 80,000 miles. We set a goal of trying to at least order a new car at the $75,000 mark. I would like to point out that that cost also includes the removal of all the equipment from the old vehicle, reinstallation. All the equipment is reused again, with the exception of the plastic prisoner seats. We very frequently, for obvious reasons, just throw those out after 5 years of service or so. So that includes the striping, the painting, the reinstallation of all the emergency equipment.
And the $34,774, that's a reimbursement for a car that had some time on it, right? So that reimbursement would not presumably pay for a whole new car, would it? Or is that what we're saying is the case?
Yeah, we insure the safety vehicles at replacement value, so when they get destroyed, the insurance reimburses for the replacement of the vehicle in total.
But they wouldn't pay for a replacement of a new vehicle, though, would they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that's what he just said.
Just for the safety vehicles.
So a 4-year-old safety vehicle that's destroyed, we buy insurance that we'll pay for a new one, not a 4-year-old one.
Yes, sir.
Any other commissioner comment? Any public comment?
Yeah, well, yes, also, on the budget. Is this in the budget, or explain to me the budgetary and how this works?
Sure. Included in the budget is the 5-year capital program, and as part of the 2015 portion of that program, the 4 vehicles that Lieutenant referred to moments ago are included in there. Just as a frame of reference for the public is that there are a total of 29 vehicles, which include motorcycles, K-9 units, detective vehicles, and other patrol and detail-related vehicles in the fleet. So out of 29, the capital program for 2015 replaces 4 of those. And the lieutenant touched on the reason in terms of mileage. At 75,000 miles is when the maintenance becomes, that's the point when maintenance becomes more expensive than replacement. So every 3 to 4 years, those vehicles are turned over.
So this will be a lump sum disbursement, and is an expense for the year, or is this, do we take any under the governmental accounting standards board? Do we put aside any kind of depreciation for this, or how does that work?
Well, the depreciation is accounted for as part of when we do the audited annual financial statements. So, yes.
It's not really depreciation, it's a reserve. You set up a reserve. We're not a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit. There's no depreciation taken, right? But you say you are putting aside a reserve to replace these vehicles, or is it just come up in the budget as part of the regular spending?
Yeah, it comes up in the budget as part of regular spending. Actually, that's part of what CARFAC will look at this year, and what we've been talking about for the last few years is developing a more sustainable capital funding program, which might include setting aside money annually in some sort of savings program. But right now, the way the capital program's funded is through annual revenues. So revenues we receive this year through the general fund will be transferred to the capital fund, and 166,000, I'm rounding, will be allocated towards these 4 vehicles, not including the insurance reimbursement one.
But I also think, too, as part of the 5-year plan that the board reviews and approves, you'll actually see how the police actually break out all the vehicles for the years for the replacements with the estimated the mileages and that. So the police have done a nice job that actually you see as part of the budget package of where these replacement vehicles are going down the road. So you can actually see that in the budget.
I think I did look at that when we were studying the budget, but I need to ask a question on that point. Well, will these, we don't put 80,000 miles on each vehicle per year, do we? In other words,
No, not per year.
we won't expect to see another, for the 4 Explorers, we won't expect to see another $166,000 expense 1 year from now.
Well, we have 29 vehicles, we might have.
For other vehicles, for other replacement vehicles as they're going.
Okay, so this is something we're going to be doing every year, and it's on a schedule, as you said.
Correct.
It's in the budget.
Right.
All right.
Any public comment? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Can I have a motion to approve Resolution 2015-09, approval of Act 511 auditor contract renewal?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Commissioner comment?
Yes, this is for reinstatement of the contract with a company called Veritax, and the principal is Kevin Barrett, and it provides auditing services for business privilege and mercantile tax. So what this is we have an outside contractor who is an auditor who contacts our local businesses, our resident businesses and taxpayers, and asks them to see their financials and other documentary evidence that they are in compliance with our Act 511 business privilege and mercantile tax requirements. This says that this is for an hourly rate, and is there any incentive or contingent component of the payment?
Yes. In the legislative summary that accompanied the resolution, we included under the fiscal impact what the incentive compensation would be, and it's a regressive scale. So it's on a straight hourly basis, which the hourly rate is being held consistent at $160 per hour, which has been the case since '92. So that's not changing. Any audit revenues collected from 0 to 500,000, there's no additional compensation made. From audit collections from 500,001 to 1.5 million, a 20% contingency fee would be paid. Then from 1.5 million to 2.5, 15%, and then anything over 2.5 million is 10%. So it goes back down. For frame of reference, over the last 4 years, 3 of those years we had less than $500,000, and then in one of those years we had about 1.3. If you include the $8 million settlement, that was closer to 10 million. But so regular audit collections are usually less than the $500,000. The negotiation here was Kevin is to incentivize Kevin to focus efforts here in Radnor and help us out versus other clients. At the same time, focus on more results driven than just straight hourly rate activity.
So presumably you do not have any philosophical problem with contingent fee payment for a hired third-party auditor?
No, keeping in mind at the end of the day, decisions, any kind of audit decision that is settled upon comes in front of this board, and any other kind of audit where there is no dispute, where it is just a straight calculation of the code, it's based on the code itself. It's not based on any kind of subjective input from the auditor. And at the end of the day, the township owns all of those decisions. So the auditor does the work, does the calculation, delivers those back to the administration. In cases where the taxpayer does not dispute the amount, it is paid in full. In situations where that's negotiated or some sort of settlement is discussed, those come in front of this board. So yes, because at the end of the day, the township owns all of those results, we do feel comfortable with the contingent base.
Well, what I will say is that in my professional groups, as a tax attorney and a state and local counsel, we, in general, the business community, and I personally am against contingent fee audit firms. Once again, and I've made this point several times for the constituents, the goal of the township is not to wring out as much money as possible from our taxpayers. We're not a for-profit entity. This is not the goal to fleece, to the extent possible, every single taxpayer in the township for every single cent and to maximize financial return.
Is that a golden fleece you're talking about?
What we're talking about is the role of government. The role of government is to spend just what it needs to provide the home the facility, the protection, and the liberty of the constituents. What contingent fee auditors will do is, and Bill alluded to it, they will make settlements. They will tend to pursue as high a benefit or a cash payment from the taxpayers as they can possibly achieve, because that's what their incentive is, to get. The more money they get from the taxpayers, the more they get paid. And I believe that's aberrant to our role as part of governance. The goal should not be to extract as much money from our taxpayers as possible, but in auditing, to come to what the law is and to require those who are subject to the law to pay just what is due, not to force them into a settlement that they may not want to do. And oftentimes people will settle just for the convenience or for the nuisance value. So they will settle and pay more than they feel that they believe, because they don't want to pursue it in court, and they don't want to pursue the administrative and legal remedies. And I believe that having a contingent fee auditor working for the township is improper, and that we and I would urge all of my fellow commissioners to vote against this. I know Kevin, and Kevin is a very smart guy, and he's very good at auditing, and he works all over the state. He knows business privilege and mercantile taxes, and he knows how to do this. He's really, at an advantage compared to the taxpayer across the state. So I'm happy to have Kevin. I would say let's pay him on an hourly basis and pay him for what he does, but certainly will not support a contingent fee arrangement, and would urge the commissioners to join with me in support of better government and fairness in government and local government.
Rich, I just want to make a few comments. I don't necessarily agree with the idea of your ideas of government, but I respect your ideas. So what I'd like to just say is that the whole point of this is to drive compliance. And without compliance, we don't get revenue. So we've seen with compliance, we get more revenue. And in fact, in the 1 year, we ended up with about $9.5 million of revenue due to improved compliance. And the compliance didn't come out of, mailing the tax bill and waiting for it to come back. It came from researching these companies and understanding really what.
John, we don't mail it out at all. It is. Those who are local, they do it on their own. They're subject. They're supposed to know.
I understand. I pay it in another town. So anyway, let me just drive the point home. The point is that some companies want to view what they owe differently than the way we view it. So the way they report their income and the way we see their income may be two different things. The auditors are needed to do this. So in this case, Veritax is doing a service for us. I do agree that we want to fully understand the compensation structure, and we're going. Did we have a blended rate before? Was it, Bill? Was it just a fixed rate per hour before?
Just straight $160.
Yeah. So I can understand. We went into a fixed rate contract back in 2004. So literally 11 years later, it's still the same rate. So we have to consider raising that rate. What I'm concerned about here is the incentive structure is a very good incentive structure, and we'll get results, but we're going to spend a lot of money getting them. And I think from a policy standpoint, I may want this to come off the agenda just so the board can discuss this. What I don't really see, and I'm sure it's been done, Bill, I'm sure you've looked at this very closely, and I think you're making a good decision from your standpoint, but from the taxpayer standpoint, we may want to revisit this. So anyway, the question for me is, do we want to have a fixed rate per hour, or do we want to have a blended program like this, or go straight incentive? But if you just run through the numbers, just in any given in a $1 million year, this incentive payment is $200,000 plus the hourly rate of $160. What I don't know right now is how many hours per year it takes to develop that type of revenue. and collect that tax. So I think I still have a few questions. And what I would appreciate if we take this off the agenda tonight, maybe give Bill a chance to give us a little more detail into how many hours per year we typically engage this contractor, and then look at the results. So I don't know if that's a fair,
Well,
I don't want to interfere with administrative process, but I do want to understand, this is a much different pay scheme to go from a fixed rate per hour to fixed rate per hour plus a fairly generous rate, just seems like a lot to me.
maybe if I can just shed some light on this, because I think there's two different stories here. One is when we use the word taxpayer, it always goes to the resident. We use that because it's the taxpayer, we're fleecing the taxpayer. We're not fleecing anyone.
Right.
There's the residents, and then it's the business community. And then we talk about, well, this fee that the auditor's going after. So if the businesses are paying the taxes that they're supposed to, then there's nobody paying a contingency fee or any other fee, because if the audit goes right, nobody's paying, correct? So there isn't. So there's nothing there.
But it's not black
So
and white.
the issue-
But,
so the
but
issue-
Bob, it's not black and white. It's a gray area.
Okay,
and
so
different
but no,
taxpayers
hold
take
on.
different positions.
Hold on,
It's not-
but Rich, wait a minute. If though an audit is done, and Kevin does the audit, and they find that they're in compliance, nobody's charged any fee. But the issue is when we throw a blanket over taxpayers are paying too much or whatever. No, the residents of Radnor Township pay to Radnor Township a relatively low cost to Radnor Township itself when you break down that cost and the level of services you receive. Just like you do in your private business and that, you look at revenues and that. We aren't out for the almighty dollar here, but also you have to position yourself on where you look at revenue. So when you do an audit, when we look at the $8 million revenue, someone didn't pay their fair share to Radnor Township like every other business has paid. Everyone has complied with that.
That's not right,
So
Bob.
here's someone that did not pay so, and an audit came to, and there was a settlement that was made. Someone then made a payment.
That's
So
not
how
true.
that came.
It's not true.
How is it not true?
It's not true because their view. It doesn't matter. At any
But there was something that was done.
any individual taxpayer can have the position, and it's not black and white. You're subject to tax or not. There's various elements. It's a gray area, and sometimes taxpayers take the position they are not subject to tax, and that the tax is not due, and they are correct. And sometimes you disagree on the facts, and reasonable people can disagree as to what is actually due. So to say anyone is not paying their fair share is incorrect. No one is required to pay any more tax than what is due under the law, and reasonable people can differ as to what is due. Now, I don't know the details around the $8 million payment that we received and the settlement, but the payment and the settlement were paid it may have been paid not because somebody thought it was due, but because they preferred to resolve the issue, and I think the people moved out of the township too. They resolved the issue for what they thought was worth it for their business. That's totally different than whether they owed tax and whether they were going to pursue all the remedies to prove that or not.
Okay, so
It'd be good debate time, but we won't.
Bob, I don't want to, and Bill, I'm not raising this question because I think anything's wrong. I just want to make sure, this is a big policy change to me. We're going from 160 an hour, which is a pretty decent rate for a professional, to 160 an hour plus a fairly large finder's fee. And just to put it in perspective, on an $8 million settlement, it would be $800,000 finder's fee. That's a huge, huge incentive. And I got to be honest, I'm thinking about changing careers if I can get that. So and Bill, I don't mean to bring this up now, but I didn't realize the schedule until I looked at it. But I know this has been to CARFAC. I know they're recommending that this is a good incentive structure, good policy. Would you be opposed to us delaying this for 2 more weeks and maybe having us get a little more background on what the projections will be on the costs?
Well, ultimately, if that's what the board needs to feel comfortable with it, then then that's, I mean, it's your decision. So that's your call. I do want to point out one thing. We keep referring to the $8 million settlement. That was one time in the history of the township. And so we're using hyperbole to try to apply that to what goes on normally. A normal audit at the end of the day is not that significant.
And I would argue that if we had a strong audit process and this vendor in place early on, we wouldn't have gotten to 8 million. We would have caught it at 800,000, 80,000, not 8 million. So we would have caught it sooner.
One other observation is that in situations where the taxpayer feels like they disagree with the calculation or the application of the tax law, those end up going, if not settled, they go to court and they're resolved through that avenue. So it's a situation where at the end of the day, the court's going to ultimately decide what the court sees as fair or not fair in terms of what is in the law. If there's a dispute over the collection of the tax, we got to change the law. So what we're proposing here with our arrangement with Veritax is one piece of the overall administration of the law as it exists on the books now. And for the experience we have with Veritax and with Kevin suggests that A, he's going to be fair. B, he's usually pretty accurate with his interpretation or the application of the law. So it's not a situation where he's out, wringing everybody's hands trying to squeeze that last penny out of them. At the end of the day, he does the math. He comes back. We have an Act 511 solicitor that reviews the application of the law to see if they agree. And then ultimately, they hand it over to the township and say, do you agree or disagree? Here's our legal advice on which way to go. If we go down the road where we disagree with the taxpayer, it goes through the judicial process. If the taxpayer has the option to agree but settle, and I'm not disagreeing that sometimes they do that because they'd rather just settle than go through the legal process, which could be expensive. But in those cases, they're paying less than what the actual calculation is. No one's ever paying more. And then the third route is both sides agree. And so I think we're thinking of this as though we're hiring someone who's going to run out there and start squeezing businesses for every nickel and dime. That's not the case. They're going to go out, they're going to identify those that appear to not be compliant with the law. And then that starts the process. There's going to be a calculation done, there's going to be a legal review, and at the end of it, there is going to be either an assessment or a sign-off confirming that your tax records and your filings and your payments have all been consistent with what we believe to be the law.
Bill, I have a question on one of the things you just said. It's not clear to me how you measure the baseline. For example, the table says if Mr. Barrett, Veritax, collects anywhere from $500,001 to $1,500,000, then he gets 20%. But how do you measure I'll call it new money. He's producing new money. What do you measure that against? Last year's return or what?
So it's based on a calendar year and when the audit is, there's a specific date when the notice of audit is delivered to the taxpayer. So that date is what starts the clock, so to speak. So any audits that are started in 2015 will carry that date, and any audit proceeds that are generated from those audits in 2015 will apply to this table.
What do you
In
measure?
aggregate, if they reach those limits, that's when the incentive kicks in.
But
Bill, is that the difference between what they stated they owed versus what we think they owe?
At the end of the day, the calculation is made based on what the township collected, period.
that's still not clear to me. Let's take an example. If in 2013, one of our retail businesses in the township paid $500 in business privilege tax, Mr. Barrett then looks at that record and contacts the retailer, and if he collects more money than 500, is that what is 500 then the baseline? What the business paid last year is measured as the baseline, and from there the incentive compensation is calculated?
Okay, using that example, first of all, Mr. Barrett would not collect any money. It would be an assessment of underpaid taxes. So it just,
Okay.
I mean, I know I'm parsing words, but it's been suggested that he's going to go out and try to hammer people, and that's not the case. If that particular entity is audited, and they have filed and paid $500, and it turns out that they missed a segment of their business that generated enough tax that an additional $200 should have been paid, for example. The compensation will be based only on the $200 that is collected as a result of that audit. So the baseline tax revenue is not part of what Mr. Barrett's engagement is, or compensation would be.
Right, I understand. Okay. I have one other comment, and that is, I tend to agree with the township manager with regard to the policy that we're following here. I don't look upon this as exacting a pound of flesh from our business taxpayers. I look at it this way, Rich, that if 90% of our businesses and others that are subject to these Act 511 taxes, if 90% of them are paying their fair share and 10% are not, then I think it's a matter of fairness. Our policy is grounded in fairness in that case, and we should have somebody out there finding hidden revenue or finding miscalculation of profit. So in my view, the net effect of that is it helps all of us that live here and pay taxes or have businesses and pay taxes, because if the deadbeats aren't paying, then and they start to pay, then that pushes down everybody's taxable obligation.
Well, I would never call taxpayers deadbeats, our constituents or our businesses, but it's not a matter of having an auditor. We have our own auditors, and we're proposing having an outside auditor. The issue here is the issue of how we compensate the auditor. And let me give you the best example that's right now is a gray area. Traditionally, a lot of people have rental housing, rental investment properties in the township, and certain townships had taken the position that rental income received by a person who has a rental property as a side business or as their primary business would be subject to the business privilege and mercantile tax. And our tax here in Radnor is actually very high at $3 per thousand. There was a recent ruling that if all you're doing is leasing a property to someone as a lessee, as a person who is a landlord, that should not be subject to business privilege and mercantile tax. And I know people in Radnor who have this situation who have paid business privilege and mercantile tax on their leased properties, and who did it because they were, I won't say bullied, but they were intimidated into paying it. So I think you're wrong that there's no way we can say who's going to be intimidated and who isn't. But that's not the point. The point is that there's no such thing as a fair share. The point is what taxes are levied. And I would say our taxes are high. $3 per thousand is a high rate. Others are $1 or $1.50. And so the fair share is a bogus term. It doesn't mean anything. The taxpayers will be inconvenienced. The taxpayers, the best they can hope for is a legal battle if they disagree, and the expense and the difficulty and the effort, and even auditing business taxpayers require the business taxpayers to take their people and sit with our auditor and spend their money and resources not doing their business, not furthering their objectives or adding to the economy, but arguing with or dealing with what sometimes is unreasonable or overly difficult to comply with requirements of an auditor. So again, it's not a matter of auditing. It's not a matter of the law. The law's in place. I'm for enforcing the law. and I think everybody will pay the law. Where there's a disagreement, we can hash those issues out. The issue is, do we want to have a hired gun who is going to be motivated to extract as much as he can and to get people to settle as often as they can, and hopefully not take it to court? And I think that that's wrong, and we should not do that. And again, it's aberrant to our system of local government and fairness to the taxpayers and constituents and our residents in Radnor Township.
Sir, did you have something you wanted to say?
Wait, can I just ask Bill? Bill,
This gentleman wants to let him speak, and then,
well, I just want to, just hold on. Bill, could we, what would please me if we have some historical data from what we've paid out under the previous terms and the number of hours per year that we could expect in any given year? And I think you're hoping to see those hours go up some to get better compliance, so I would respect that. Yeah, so I'm going to move to table this, just so we can get a little more feedback. I also want to mention
And I'll second that.
that there appears to be, at least from, in my opinion, a discontinuity in the incentive structure. And the reason I say that, at 1.5 million, it's a $300,000 incentive, and at 1.5 million and $1, it's 15 times 15. So I don't know what that number is right now, but there may be a discontinuity there. So I'm just thinking that a more linear scale, just a linear compensation rate percentage maybe, would be fair and easier to calculate. And
Sure. Yeah,
So-
we actually, when CARFAC reviewed this, basically for the latter half of last year, we had actually gone through the actual activity from the prior years and applied this new compensation package to that. So we have it all. So yeah, we can forward
yeah,
it to the board.
and I don't want to get into us trying to come up with rates tonight. That's why. So, okay. So I move this to table.
No, let's not have, let's let this gentleman speak, and then you can make a motion.
Okay, sure.
Hi, I am Donald Levan, 221 Woodstock Road in Villanova. It gets down to one very important point, and this is the philosophical component of what constitutes effective versus abusive tax enforcement. My personal feeling, without any question whatsoever, is the contingency fee arrangements are a perverse incentive to the individual who has to come up with the number that somebody else owes. We see it in Washington easily, where various agencies have slapped businesses with obscene fines that they have to capitulate to because otherwise they're going to get slammed some way or another. Again, it's a philosophical difference, nothing more than that. Do you believe in any way whatsoever that somebody should force you in any way whatsoever to comply under the threat of something where he benefits and you do not? That's all.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Hi, Leslie Morgan, 12 Farm Road. A few things. I think I'd like to hear a little more from the finance director on the $8 million one-time payment, which obviously was great. It was my understanding from attending these meetings and listening that that was internally negotiated. That is what was told to us in these meetings. So it is surprising that that was done by maybe this guy or maybe it wasn't and I misunderstood. So I'd like to know how that person helped get that. I thought it was internally done. I know that we applauded the people that did it, and it was a great job. And then furthermore, because of business, somebody said a statement that that business moved, and I didn't know if it was a cause because our taxes were too high or the approach was made, and that's great. I'd just like to know that. And the third thing is that in the last 12 months, I was contacted twice. I own rental properties, leased properties in a different state. And I was not contacted but once, twice, and I had to spend my own time as a business person explaining that I happened to be under construction on this one thing, so I lost my address, and I was using my Radnor address, but all my taxes were filed in another state, all compliant, and I didn't really take too much umbrage the first time, but the second time I did. Thank you.
Just so you know, our auditor goes out, finds the problems, the tax people look at it, and the township takes it from there once we get the information. And then we go and negotiate. They don't negotiate for us.
I'll
I
just-
appreciate that, Bill. I'm just telling you my little
Well,
story.
yeah,
So
Thank you.
we've always used external firms to aid and assist in auditing, and we cannot discuss the taxpayer in question, but I'll assure you that the taxpayer wasn't leaving because of that. So,
All right, is the motion on the board? You want to make the motion?
John made a motion to table, I second it.
You want to make it now?
motion to table this proposal for the compensation of Veritex.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Okay. We have Public Works?
Yes, we have, on one item on the agenda, it's Resolution 2015-08, a preliminary and final consideration for Villanova University's West End Zone building, where they are going to raise a building and replace it with a more modern structure. I think the applicant is here. We have in our packet several memorandums from our township engineer, Gannett Fleming, and we have a note from our traffic engineer, Gilmore. And I assume everybody has looked at those, and so at this point, we can either discuss it or have the applicant come up and make a presentation.
Evening, Nick Cornelia and Chris Kowalski and Karen McManulis here for Villanova.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here again tonight to talk about this project. Villanova is very fortunate to have a rich tradition of athletic success from football, basketball, to track and field, to cross country, with 15 national championships. And unfortunately, though, our students who are asked to compete for those championships train and perform and practice in facilities that are substandard compared to a lot of local high schools. And it's long been a dream of Villanova to enhance those facilities. And thanks to some generous donors, we do have an opportunity now to realize some of those dreams. What you're looking at in front of you here is a picture of Butler Annex, a temporary building built in 1968. It's long outlived its usefulness, and it was deficient probably from the day it was opened. And we've identified this area as a place to build what we're calling our West End Zone building. And what that would do is replace on the same footprint as Butler Annex an enhanced structure that would provide the same kinds of services currently provided to our student athletes today, but in a modern environment and more robust way. So you can see this is a proposed view from Lancaster Avenue. The architecture would blend in with the architecture on that part of our campus, the brick and glass. This is an aerial view of the current site today with the Butler Annex and the white roof right here. And an overhead view of, again, what the proposed structure would look like. This is a view from inside the stadium, again, Butler Annex right here in the blue, and a proposed view of what it would look like from in the stadium. This is an overhead view of where it sits on that part of our campus. And then when you blow up the picture a little bit, and it's hard to read on here, I apologize for that, but this slide demonstrates how we're not adding services, we're actually moving things around. We're using this enhanced space, slight expansion of the current space, to allow us to better use the space that we already have. So right now, in this area already, we have women's lacrosse, softball, and lockers for our track program, as well as training and physical therapy areas. And proposed, we'll have our football offices and lockers, our strength and conditioning areas, and our training and physical therapy areas. In the part of the stadium down here in the southern part where our existing football offices and lockers are, we're proposing to move our women's lacrosse lockers and offices and softball offices and lockers. And up here in the north side of the stadium, adjacent to the parking lot that's back there, where we have our existing strength and conditioning area, we're proposing to put our track programs lockers in there. What many people don't know is that our track program, which is probably the most famous program, or at least has the richest legacy at Villanova, they do not have their own lockers now. They share lockers with other programs. So by doing this project, we'll be able to serve our student athletes in the way that they deserve. Again, no additional student athletes, no additional staff, no additional students, just a better way to serve our current population. And with that, I'm going to ask Karen to talk a little bit more about some of the details of the project.
Good evening, Karen McManuels. The last time we were here, there was a question about the zoning. We are an existing non-conforming setback with the building, and how we are going to maintain that existing non-conformity. This slide right here shows that, and hope it's a little bit clear. The first section on the left is a combination. We plan to keep the existing foundation of the exterior wall and a part of the wall itself. We will, behind it, add additional support for the new wall. So this will maintain and show that we are keeping the existing nonconformity. The other two sections, this one on the right-hand side is how it is right now. The foundation wall, the building comes up, there's an existing overhang with the Butler building. And then this is the new wall section. Again, the existing foundation and wall that will remain, and the new wall built on top of that. And the face of it, the exterior face, does not go beyond the existing exterior face. So that's to show you how we'll maintain the existing nonconformity.
I have a question, and actually, maybe Kevin Kuchansky could help with this. I understand the purpose of leaving the existing wall to maintain your nonconformity. There's a term that I learned before. It's called the line of nonconformity. And the question is, do they actually need to do this to maintain that nonconformity, or could they benefit from the line of nonconformity with the existing structures?
Expanding along the
Jake Nevin
field house,
Fieldhouse.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess in theory one could argue that. We'd have to take a look a little bit deeper into that. Something that really wasn't discussed, and you start to get into building separations and the building length issue that we have with the PI district regulations, 160 foot in length before you get to the offset at approximately 90-degree angle. That wasn't something that had come up, something that I had looked at very, very quickly. But since they were looking at putting the Butler Annex back in that location, they wanted to make sure that they could preserve that. So looking at that issue alone and putting the Butler Annex back in that location, to do that without getting into any other zoning issues, this was the way to accomplish that, ensuring that they had that nonconformity. They kept it, they preserved it, and they built on top of that and extended along its plane, was the cleanest way to proceed in that direction.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question.
Okay.
I had one question. Okay. Mr. Kowalski mentioned that the track and field and cross-country blockers will be installed on the north side of the track. Is that another structure that we're talking about? Is that?
No, this is, it would be under the stands that are already there. It's existing already. These are the north stands.
Yes.
And in this area right here, roughly where the red line is, underneath the stands is our existing fitness facility for our varsity programs. So we'll be moving that fitness equipment, that fitness program, into the new structure, freeing up that space, which we'll then dedicate to the track program.
Okay, it already exists.
Yes.
I thought it was to be constructed. Thank you.
The other issue last time
was a question in regards to stormwater. This slide right here, the plan on the left highlights the existing conditions and how it exists today. The blue area is the existing Butler Annex building and the small Verizon building and a one-story addition, which is in our project area. And the colored area itself is the project area and pretty much the limit of disturbance for the project. The darker gray is existing asphalt in front of the building. This is all existing asphalt. There's existing asphalt between the buildings. There's existing asphalt walk and behind the building. The lighter gray right now is a gravel area, which is pretty compacted, almost impervious, but not quite. And there's a small area here that's a grass area, and a small area here that's a grass. So those are the existing condition. And this gray area here is the actual track itself that goes right up to the Butler building. So the plan on the right is the proposed plan. Again, the blue is the building, and the front edge and the corners are exactly in the same place as the Butler building. And behind the building is where we're going to demo those two buildings and build an addition, infilling this area behind. So in front where the asphalt paving is, doesn't really change as far as the final surface. We're creating a little rain garden on the east side. The track will be put back. And this is the building. So this is going to be the proposed conditions. So the next slide we put together, this to help explain the stormwater management that exists on this site right now. The blue area is the different colors are each designate a drainage area. The blue area here drains to a retention basin that's in the northwest corner. This is an above grade basin. The green area is a drainage area for an underground basin behind the stadium. And the pink area is unretained currently and drains to an inlet that's right down here at the lower edge. So in each case, the project area within these drainage areas are very small. And where we tie in for our project areas, we've labeled as a point of interest. So that's where we tie into the existing system from draining our area, and everything after that is the same. Nothing changes. So in each case, with A and B areas, we are decreasing the flow to those points of interest. So overall, we decrease the flow. In A area, I think I can increase this. So in the A area, our project area, the total drainage area is roughly 4.3 acres, and our project area that is contributing to that area is 2.3. So we're only 5%, 0.23, excuse me, which is 5% of that area. So in the B area, we are also a very small, it is 8.5 acres, and our project area is 2.1 acres, which is only 2.5%. 2.5%. I'm sorry, it's 2.5%, but it's 0.21 acres, but which is 2.5% of the total drainage area. Okay. So, and then the area that is at the bottom, which is currently does not have any kind of management. So if we go to the next slide, which is overall. It's the same drainage areas, and the drainage area that's in the lower, we are looking to add some stormwater management. So if I can increase this. What you'll see with this is in Area A, as I said, we decreased the flow. So the,
You went back a page.
yeah, I did go back a page, I'm sorry. The 100-year flow, we're decreasing it roughly 5% less. And in the Area B, we're decreasing the flow to that 12%. So in the Area C, which is the lower area, we are proposing to manage the roof area, which is of the new building, which is 5,548 square feet. So we're looking to manage that. We're installing a new underground system in front of the building, which will tie back into the inlet where it flows now. So we are decreasing the flow. Where's my cursor? We're decreasing the flow to that inlet 7%. So overall, in all areas, we decrease the flow to those existing systems and that are in place into that inlet.
I need some clarification on that. It sounds too good to be true, I think. But I think it is true. So the old area of the structure was 10,773 feet, so 10,773. And the square footage of the new structure is 16,072. So we've increased the structure size, but in effect, are you saying that because we've reduced other impervious? Because if you're reducing
Yes,
you claim that you reduced the flow rates into all three systems, yet the building is bigger, and I'm having a hard time reconciling those two statements.
Physics would
No,
say
it's-
if you
it's-
increase.
Well, no,
It's a new system being put in that's taking that water. That's what's reducing it.
Well,
System put in the front.
so the reduction is in the point of interest C. What is C? Is that that's an
Is it an inlet in the road, a curb
Oh.
inlet in the road?
Okay, yeah. So, but those inlets on the road, and I
Well,
brought this.
this particular inlet is on Villanova's property. That's in that driveway road, not Lancaster Avenue.
Okay. Do we know where that inlet flows to?
It connects into the system that is in Lancaster, the inlet's in Lancaster, and goes to the south side of Lancaster.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I was discussing at the last meeting. So what I understand, the history of this, when Villanova University installed the Pike Field, I'll call it the Pike Field Stormwater Management System. It's a very large system. It was installed at the request of the Board of Commissioners back in 2006 in response to them building this new dugout for Pike Field.
Correct.
That system was installed, but during that time, we were not able to convince Villanova to connect a drainage pipe. Now, I'll explain what the drainage pipe is. I believe it's a 24-inch pipe. It comes off Lancaster Avenue. It connects several inlets on Lancaster Avenue. And when PennDOT installed that system, that pipe left Lancaster Avenue and opened up right in the middle of Pike Field. And at some point, Villanova University wanted to use Pike Field. So Villanova University, and I don't believe they got any approval from PennDOT or from the township or anyone, they extended that pipe underneath Pike Field all the way to the rear of the property near the SEPTA Route 100 line into a spillway. That spillway then flows into the neighborhoods and becomes this creek that meanders through Conestoga Village. And I've had several property owners along that creek that have had major flooding issues. That creek swells from 2 inches to 15 feet wide and literally consumes backyards through that neighborhood. So here we have a system, this point of interest C. I understand you're reducing the flow, but I'd argue that until that pipe is addressed, that pipe where you're conveying that water underneath that field from Lancaster Avenue into the backyards of my residents of Conestoga Village, Old Oaks, and all the way down through Clemacrone Park, all the way down Ithan Creek, it just keeps going. So we have an issue there, and it's not being addressed. And I understand with the work you're doing, you're reducing the inflow into that system. But I'd argue that that system isn't valid. That system shouldn't even be that way. So again, PennDOT dumps water. They decide they want to dump water from the highway onto someone's field. They just do it. This is what they did in 1940. But Villanova decided they want to use their field, so they convey the water underneath the field and then dump it into the rear of the property, which in essence is dumping it into the neighborhood. And I need to have some assurance that even though there's a reduction here in the 100-year flow, that we're not contributing, this runoff from this project is not ending up in my neighborhood and not destroying the property value of my neighbors' homes. We have several homeowners that had to spend their own money to remedy this problem where the creek swells. And most of that runoff is from Lancaster Avenue and that point of interest C, and any other inlets within that section are being conveyed into the neighborhood. So this is the issue that I brought up at the last meeting, and I need to understand how we're going to address that. And can we get that pipe connected into the Pike Field stormwater management system so that we don't have to worry about this inflow, raising the flow rates in the streams, scouring the streams, destroying properties. There's one home, the property owner had to spend $60,000 to fix the creek walls so the front yard didn't fall in. You know, and this was all due to water coming in from POIC and the other storm grates in that section.
Just to address, I mean, we're managing the project in our project area, and the project area that contributes to that drainage area and that pipe is very small. As you said, it picks up Lancaster Avenue. I'm aware of the problems that existed down there in that neighborhood. Because when they built this softball field, one of the things Villanova did at that time is all they had to do was manage the dugouts that were being built. But they, working with the township and the issues there, voluntarily decided to do a stormwater system that would manage half this parking lot, which half this parking lot also went down there unretained. So at that time, Villanova volunteered and added an underground system, a rather large underground system, to help manage that. And I can say this part of the project, part of the problem with that downstream there, because we did a study at the time, Villanova in that drainage area that goes there, the large part of that drainage area is the neighborhoods, is the residential that has no stormwater management. So we had presented those numbers at that time. So with our project here, we're adding another underground, and we are managing it.
Okay, but you know, the issue I'm having here is this is piecemeal development in that this small little project is not having an impact on that neighborhood. And, you know, and then we have the big project coming. So we had the parking garage, the Performing Arts Center, and the dormitories and all this other construction. And at some point, if we don't do something with that pipe in Pike Field, then there's no relief. That water from the north side of Lancaster Avenue is flowing from the north side of Lancaster Avenue across, down under, and into the neighborhood. And that stream...
Are you saying that's all Villanova water?
No, it's water from POIC and the other storm grates in that small section of Lancaster Avenue in front of the field house.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the stadium.
John, I know we have Lancaster Avenue flowing down there, but it's my recollection when we had all the problems with the walls and all, that Villanova taking half that parking lot and building an underground system improved the system dramatically.
It did, but we
Yeah.
still have large inflows into that creek system. I haven't measured them. I don't know what they are.
No, but I mean, the problems we had was before they put in a system. This is where we put a system, it's greatly improved.
We went from disastrous flooding, literally lifting people's sheds off their foundation and into the creek. Literally, I've seen it, I've witnessed it.
Yeah.
We saw bridges being lifted, you know, little foot bridges going.
That's been improved.
That's been improved.
Yeah.
But the flow rates through that creek are still very high. And as you So if you're loading a lot of runoff into the creek, into this, I'll call it a stream, at the beginning, then by the time you get to the end, it's overloaded. And it's overloaded. Anyone that lives that last section near Conestoga Road, their backyards, this stream that again is only about 5 feet wide and an inch deep, swells to about 20 feet wide.
But also Barleycone and Hawthorne and Blackfriar, and they all flow down to that corner.
I understand, but,
All right.
and I'm not denying, I'm not saying that's your fault. What I'm saying is, what is Villanova's responsibility, in my opinion, is that at some point they decided they didn't want this drainage pipe from Lancaster Avenue opening up on their field. They decided they wanted to use that field for a recreation field, for a sports field, and they decided to convey that pipe from the middle of the field where it had place to drain and perk in to beyond the field, where into a swale that led right into the neighborhoods. So this is a real issue.
If that's true or not. It may be true, I'm not.
Well, I'm sorry, this was discussed, Bob Morrow, myself, and others, in a meeting with the Board of Commissioners back in 2006. And it was discussed openly at that time. They told me at that time, and that's my opinion, but they told me that that pipe was in fact extended from the middle of Pike Field. It clearly is, because the pipe is found at the other end now. But apparently at one time, if you look at historical photographs, you'll see kind of this pipe opening up into the field. So you'll see this area where the water used to drain into the field. And this is pretty typical of PennDOT in 1940, 1950, just saying we're going to convey this water to the side of the road, and we're not going to run it into a stormwater management system. But my issue is that when are we going to get the relief of all that runoff? When are we going to get the relief of this POIC? You know, is it fair that we're running that into an open creek in this neighborhood that's already stressed?
Can I ask a question
Can I
to
just,
that? Isn't it already going? Isn't it going there anyway? So meaning that whether it goes through Pike Field or whether it's picked up on an inlet in Lancaster, the flow is. So by the time it gets to the problem area, it doesn't matter the route that it took. It's when it's large enough to lift a shed. By that point, it doesn't matter the route that it took. So that if I'm sensing that if you reduce the flow at point C, then you are improving the downstream effect, albeit marginally, but you are improving the downstream effect.
We are improving the downstream effect, and the drainage area that contributes to that swale and flow where you're at. When we did this study, and I don't know the exact acreage that goes there, all I know is Villanova was roughly 7 or 9% of that total drainage area. So again, Villanova was very small contribute to that area.
That's the area, but I think there was a volume issue, because when you did put the system in, we saw a dramatic decrease in the peak volumes that were causing the destruction. But we're still seeing volume. It's just not on a 100-year storm, we're not seeing the deluge that we were seeing in the beginning. But what I am seeing is we're still seeing scouring of the creeks at the beginning of this creek system, this stream system. So, and again, I'm not trying to profess that I'm a professional at this. I'm just using my eyes. I'm looking at this. And I go back to, when are we going to get it fixed? So if we're not going to get it fixed tonight, when are we going to get it fixed? When are we going to get Villanova to tie that pipe that they conveyed past their field, which whether they had the right to do that or not, I don't know. But if PennDOT comes in, builds a highway, and they convey the water from that highway onto the side of the roadway, and then someone decides, I don't want this water here, I'm going to put a pipe in and pipe it to my neighbor, because that's basically what has happened here. I don't want the water, I'm going to put a pipe in here, and I'm going to convey that water to the next guy. Well, the next guy is the neighborhood. So the question is, what are we going to do about that? So we either take care of it tonight and we try to get them to agree to connect this pipe in Pike Field to that store and release system that's buried, or we have to get them to do it during the approvals for the
they did half the
systems.
parking lot. They're going to have to address, when they built the Arts Center and the garage, they're going to have to address stormwater on that property. But the fact is, John, is that we had some really serious destruction. And Villanova, when they put the softball field, went above and beyond. They took half their parking lot plus what they were doing and put a system there, and that greatly improved it downstream. So what we're discussing tonight is what effect this has on stormwater and it's going to lessen the impact. It's not going to get rid of that pipe, but it's going to lessen the impact, and that's what we have to decide tonight. So if you want to have this discussion again when they build the parking garage and see what the stormwater does that and how that affects it, and we can have that. But for tonight, this proposal here is improving the system minimal, not a lot, but it's not adding to it.
Okay, but it touches the other system, so, you know, I have to connect the dots.
John, you're asking for the discharge from Pike Field to go through the drainage system for Area C? That's what I'm hearing you.
No, what I'm asking for is this pipe that conveys the water from POIC that currently runs underneath Pike Field, the entire length, and dumps into a swale at the end to be diverted into the store and release system that was built in Pike Field to alleviate the issues from the parking lot. So what's interesting is, while the analysis showed that Villanova's property was only 7% of the area, when they put the store and release system in, we got dramatic relief. So if it's only 7%, how do we get dramatic relief? So it's a flow issue, peak flow issue. An area issue is one thing, but the peak flow. What should be happening right now is that pipe should be opening up into the middle of Pike Field, and that water should be draining, perking through the soil, not being conveyed downstream. That should be infiltrating. We talk all about stormwater management today. The best thing to do is infiltrate at the site if you have a place to do that. Yet, in this case, this pipe conveys the water beyond the field. So I'm asking, as part of this project, that they agree to connect that pipe in Pike Field into a store and release system at Pike Field, no longer directly conveyed into the swale.
But wouldn't you have to have measurements to determine how much of the water that is ending up in your constituents' yards and along the creek is Villanova's water versus how much of it is public water?
No, I don't need to do that. All I need to do is recognize that Villanova University decided to convey that water that was not their right to do from that field into the swale system. So they took a natural stormwater system that allowed infiltration, and they convey the water. Like I said, they don't want the problem, so they pass it on to their neighbor. Their neighbor happens to be a whole neighborhood. So that would be no different than me conveying my downspout off of my lawn onto my neighbor's lawn. I'm not allowed to do that. That's not something I'm allowed to do. So I'm asking that Villanova not do this.
Well, John, the other thing is that, when we do, number one is they might not be able to tie it in because that system wasn't built to handle that extra water. Their system would fail, and you'd get the water anyway. But I think it's a discussion that you can have again when that parking lot is being built upon. We only handle half of that parking lot. They're going to have to deal with the stormwater in that parking lot, and that's when we can have this discussion again. But for tonight's purposes, we're doing a system that isn't adding to your problem. Therefore, they don't have to move that pipe. You can request it and ask it, but it's not something that we can mandate that be done under this project.
I think we can mandate it because the water, the inflow POIC, that pipe is in fact connected to the pipe under Pike Field.
Well, let's
it
ask
is
our
one system.
Let's ask
It's
our
not
staff
two.
if we can mandate on this project that they do something off-site that's been there for years.
I guess the easiest answer is they're conforming to the ordinance with one exception, which I have noted in my review letter, where they're requesting a waiver for the infiltration on this system.
So in exchange for waiving infiltration, I'm asking that we fix this problem that was created years ago. Just get it done. Just fix it now. And in the end, maybe the agreement is that they agree to do something with it when the construction begins. But the point is, I need something tonight for me to feel good about this. I need some assurance that Villanova will in fact address that pipe and will not convey that water under the field into the neighborhoods, but they will in fact disconnect that conveyance. They will disconnect that conveyance, and they will handle that water on their property like it was before.
I want to make one final comment here. I had a client years ago that had a problem where water was coming onto her property, and she needed to do something about it. And as I recall the research, if water is diverted artificially, If water comes onto your property and is damaging your property, you are allowed to move it off your property without liability. That the law allows you to do that. In this case, some of the water that is ending up in the creek is Villanova's, apparently, and some of it is public water. So I don't see how we can say, I wouldn't want to be in the position where I was being told by the government agency that I had to remedy a problem that was not of my making. I'll fix what is of my making. But here, I think you're kind of mixing the two, and without calculations, I'm not sure how we can do it.
It doesn't matter the calculations. John's point is, there's something that's known. You're asking for something. It doesn't comply. Doesn't. So there's no mandate, as Mr. Spengler indicated. It's not a mandate. It's a question. Why don't you address what the man is asking for? That's what the issue is. I hear what you're silent. So you're saying no?
It's not my position to agree or not to agree. I mean, that is something Villanova...
Is it the Villanova University's position? They have to do it, right? Can we get Villanova University in here and talk to them?
They can, but I will say, with the infiltration, I believe the code allowed, there is no perk on the site where we're at, and I believe the code allows us to ask for that waiver if no perk exists. And that's typical of the soils around Villanova. They do not perk very well.
Commissioner Curley had a few questions.
So are we done with the presentation? Are we doing the questions, or are you going to, do you have more presentation?
That was it for the presentation.
I have questions as well, so go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, if you want to go last, okay. All right. Last time we reviewed this, I think it was, when was it we reviewed it? It wasn't December 1st, that was the Planning Commission. Several weeks ago. It was in December? You remember the date?
9th, I believe.
December 9th. December 9th, we said, I thought that the consensus of the board was that this was a big enough change that we should not do a preliminary final in one shot, that it should be a preliminary plan and then a final. So I thought we were going to come back with a preliminary, but that's not the case. Am I mistaken, or is there something changed in this?
Now, the Planning Commission and the staff are recommending a preliminary final.
Well, hold on. The last meeting, there was a consensus that this was preliminary.
Do you mind if I? So I believe that there was a consensus, so I don't see any reason for us to argue this point. Let's just rehash the consensus and then move on. So it's my understanding that we agreed as a board that this would be a two-step process. And I don't see any reason why. I mean, I'm certainly not going to change that tonight. So I don't know if others feel differently, but there's at least three of us that committed to this being a two-step process and aren't going to walk away from that commitment tonight. So as I see it, this is going to be a two-step process at this point.
And we would accept that and hope for preliminary approval tonight.
So I don't think we need to argue that point or make that point. We'll accept that it's going to be a two-step process and move on to the next one.
I agree with that, but that's not what the plans say, though. So
it doesn't matter what the plan says. It matters what we're going to do tonight.
It matters what the resolution
Yes.
says.
So we're going to make it a two-step process.
Good. That wasn't clear to me, so thank you. Okay. Secondly, we say that this is within the existing footprint, but it's not within the existing footprint. It's got one wall that will remain down to the foundation, but the wall will be completely rebuilt. In addition to that, there's a whole new building behind, and there's also a little bump to the west of the building, which connects it to the field house. So this is not the existing footprint.
Rich, we're talking about the nonconformity. The rest of the building you can build anywhere you want back there. It's the nonconformity.
It's an existing nonconformity.
Be quiet, please.
Rich, it's an existing nonconformity. We're not increasing the nonconformity, which is permitted by our zoning code.
Is the bump that connects to the field house, is that within the 120 feet?
If it's behind, you have an existing nonconformity anyway. Even if it wasn't within or is within the 120 feet, you have an existing nonconformity. You can extend that nonconformity.
Well, I just object to the terminology. It's the nonconformity. You can explain it better than saying, "Oh, we're building on the existing footprint," because that's not the case.
That's just the law.
So the next issue is the transportation study. You're asking for a waiver of the transportation study, and I don't see why we would do that So is that still the case, requesting a waiver of the
Requesting a
transportation?
waiver of the transportation study. We're not increasing students, we're not increasing spectators, we're not increasing any traffic at all to this site.
And finally, the plan is not to set aside or create recreational area or parkland, but to pay a fee of $4,000. Is that accurate?
I assume it is.
It's the code requirement, a fee in lieu of, which is allowed by code.
So that seems like once again, a very small number for a very large expansion here. So
It's what's required by code. It's per the code.
I understand. Just seems like a very small number.
All right, Don, you want to go?
So I'm hearing everything. Roger, I'm hearing that this is, in your opinion, consistent with our code, with the exception of that item that you identified regarding the infiltration, correct?
It is, and the area in pink that's shown on the diagram there currently is completely uncontrolled
Yeah.
stormwater coming out towards Lancaster, which now will go into a system that they'll put underground that'll be controlled and reduced before it goes into the system.
And the zoning issue that we talked about in December, Kevin, in your opinion, this building is compliant with zoning?
Yes.
Okay. And then the one-step, two-step, I know that I made the commitment to this being a two-step process, so I'm sticking with that tonight, so it'll have to just be preliminary.
That's fine.
So, John, the concern you raised, I mean, that's worth pursuing, but to me, that's a large capital project that exists in and of itself. And to me, there's probably a scale issue. That's probably a very significant, trying to find a way to infiltrate a 24-inch pipe would be a project on a scale that is much bigger than Area C.
Correct.
At least that's the way I would see it.
Correct.
So to me, it's not, there isn't a nexus to this project that. just let me
Have
finish,
it
John,
a
just let me finish.
compromise. Okay.
When I'm done, I'll just let me finish. So for me, there isn't a logical nexus. To me, this is an appropriate way to proceed. And then regarding the waiver for the infiltration, again, I see consistency with that if the site doesn't perk, then, the baseline is non-percolation. So, and then traditionally, that's what we've done. We've found other ways. There are other ways. There is peak rate control. So
Right. And
as
we
far
have
as I see
a
it,
rain
we are
garden that we've
consistent
added.
with past practice and consistent with our code. And then same with the traffic impact study. If we're not impacting traffic, they've explained to us how the demand isn't changing. So in my opinion, we're consistent with practice and the logic of our code. So I don't see any reason not to support it at this night for a preliminary approval.
Any other commissioner?
Well, Don, to your point, okay, so we don't ask them to connect a 24-inch pipe into the store and release system. We ask them to connect a pipe the same diameter as a POIC into the stormwater management system. That way they are, in fact, not conveying the inflow to that connection, but they're conveying, they're not conveying it, they're running that into the store and release system. And the stormwater, because it doesn't perk at that location, we're allowing them to let it perk across the street in the system in Pike Field. So, and I don't believe that it's a major capital works project to connect a 6-inch pipe or whatever. I don't know what size C is in that case. I'm sorry, but I do have a problem with this because they're building a 50,000 square foot building. I can't seem to find those numbers in any of our.
The actual addition itself is about 40,000. There's 10,000 square feet worth of renovation work.
Okay, so there's 50,000 square feet of impervious, I'll say.
No, it's a three-story
No,
building,
no.
John. Come
No?
on.
The
Take one
increase
floor.
in impervious is only 3,884.
Okay.
That's
So it's
the
50,000
increase
square feet of usable space. All right.
Well, some of that exists. Like I said, 10,000 already exists.
Okay. But the point is you're raising the entire structure, you're building a whole new structure. It's like a new project. It's like a new project. They're just happy to maintain this small foundation wall. We know how this works. It's a whole new building. And when it's a whole new building, if you can't infiltrate the water, yet you're conveying it across the street and into my backyard, Shouldn't this be the time to say, no, you know what, whatever POIC is, whatever size pipe that is, if it's 6-inch, let's put a 6-inch line from the 24-inch pipe into that storm release system. It'll self-meter. I'm not the engineer here, but that's kind of the crux of it, right? So we'll control how much is going into the system. But I want them to agree that that water from that inlet should not be going into Conestoga Village. It's not right.
And also, the point, it's a substantially new building. It's all new, it's 42,000 square feet, 10,000 renovated. All you're keeping is a foundation wall. Shouldn't that be enough that you can no longer avail yourself of a continuing nonconformity, Counselor?
Rich, all I can tell you is what the law is. And the law is you have an existing.
Well, I don't work in land use, but I can tell you that at some point it gets unreasonable, doesn't it? In other words, you're saying it's continuing nonconformity, but yet we're totally eradicating the entire building except for a little piece of foundation. When does it get to be a totally new project necessitating that you comply with existing law?
We have a 60-year-old zoning code, and that's why we're seeing piecemeal changes on it, because this town has grown in 60 years.
I'd argue that this is an unreasonable request, that this is a new building and should not be under the requirements of a continuing nonconformity, and we should go to court to figure it out, because I think that a judge would side with me and reasonable people.
Is there any other commissioner comments?
My final comment is that I believe this project is, I would assume at $200 a square foot construction cost, 40,000 square feet, we're looking at $8 million. So if it's an $8 to $10 million project, as I recall, and Bob Morrow's here, I may ask him to come up and speak to this. Bob, you probably remember the meeting where I sat with you in the rented Township building, and we discussed Pike Field. We discussed this very issue. Okay. The point is, that whole stormwater management system that you put in Pike Field, I believe cost less than $1 million. It was probably $400,000. So to argue that this is a capital project to connect into this, that's hogwash. Okay, it's a pipe. This is an $8 to $10 million project. I'm asking for a $20,000 or $30,000, maybe a $50,000 pipe to help convey some of this water into that system.
All right, let's get some public comment. Your public comment? All right, John, you want to make a motion for what you want, or?
My motion is that Villanova agree to convey some of this water in this pipe into the stormwater management system in Pike Field, and most importantly, that they store and release the same rate of flow of POIC, point of interest C, into that stormwater management system.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any public comment, commissioner comment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed? It's defeated 4-2. Can I have a motion on the preliminary approval? Don, you want to make a motion, or Jim?
Sure, I'll motion Resolution 2015-08 with the change that it's limited to preliminary approval only.
Do we have a second, Jim?
I'll second it.
Commissioner comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 5-1. Thank you.
I don't have any more items on Public Works and Engineering.
Public safety, there's nothing under public safety. Community development, nothing under community development. Park and recreation, personnel administration, finance and audit, library, public health, old business, new business, public participation. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you.